The Secret Glory, Introduction to Chapters 5 and 6, by Arthur Machen. From many sources, both public and private, I have received criticisms, mild and not so mild, of the view taken in The Secret Glory of the great public schools. I have been accused of denigrating these famous institutions, of painting them, that is, of an almost and impossible blackness. My answer to all these accusations is a simple one. A few weeks after publication of The Secret Glory, I read a review of a book called Of Edmund Ware. Dr. Ware was a famous headmaster of Eton, and in the volume in question, the colleagues of the late head testified profusely as to his merits. Thus, I distinctly feared Ware's accession. I feared the dominance of athletics, his own autocratic ways, his strict adherence to the routine of what I thought a rather narrow and dry scholasticism. The change came, and never was a more delightful surprise. It was like a fresh wind from the sea blowing into the place. Another Eton master. I like to think that Ware regarded the school as a great army on the march, the pace of which must necessarily be kept uniform. The lower master. Ware's visits to schoolroom were tremendous. There is no other word for it. The door flew open, and in he swept. The boys sprang up with palpitating hearts, and the master looked suddenly bewildered. Yet there was nothing to fear. The awe was that naturally felt in the presence of majesty. Another master on Dr. Ware's boots. He mentions that the head was a man of ordinary middle height. They were not ungainly or policeman-like boots, but only the head could have wielded them, and wield is the only verb that fits the case. He seemed hardly mortal in his brogues. Lastly, a colleague who speaks of the head's vibrating voice. This vibration had an effect on one's spine, like that of a fiddle in the overture of Tristan. Now all this is nothing more or less than unseemly and idiotic drivel. I take it that there can be no dispute on that point. Their late chief, these masters say, was like a fresh sea breeze. He was also like the violins in the overture of Tristan. He was of ordinary height, but yet he seemed taller than the sons of men. His mere presence bewildered the master who served under him, and gave the boys palpitations of the heart. He thought that the boys must all leave their lessons at the same rate, as an army must march at the same pace. None but he could have wielded his boots. Does such stuff as this need any comment? Now, let us consider that the men who uttered these imbecilities were masters at Eton, that Eton has always been considered as the head and chief and pattern of all the other great public schools of England. If they do these things in the Green Tree, and what is likely to be the product of a system administered by such men as this? The Secret Glory has been criticized from another point of view. It contains not only the public school motive, but also the motive of Celtic sanctity, typified usually for us by the legend of the Holy Grail. And some of my friends have expressed the view that it was a pity to mingle the one with the other, to interrupt and confuse the story of beautiful and wonderful things with the consideration of ugly and squalid and detestable things. You were wrong, they have said, to break off the vision of the perpetual choir of Cor-arbennic by the horror of the school service at Lupton, Dr. Chesson preaching. As a Yorkshire friend of mine often says to me, I don't agree with you. In these days, at all events, if one is to obtain credence for the real, it is necessary first of all to posit the actual. Be certain that your feet are firmly planted on the earth before you lift up your head to the heavens. And furthermore, I am sure that what I have done in The Secret Glory corresponds in the main to the veritable order of the world. I myself have seen something of life, I mean of real life, and my experience teaches me that the veils of enigmas are drawn aside not so much by fairy shoes or in enchanted castles as in Pentonville and Lloyd Square. I knew that theosophy was all nonsense when I learnt that the Mahatmas dwelt in the hidden recesses of Tibet, where, by the way, they would not be tolerated for a moment. If Madame Blavatsky had placed her magi in the recesses of Canterbury, I believe I should have found something credible in the system. And now, finally, a curious point. In the introduction to another volume in this edition, I made some remarks on the strange temporary assent which one gives sometimes to the marvelous in fiction. If the author has lured us on cunningly, leading us, step by step, on ground which seems firm enough, into his cave of wonders, where the solid earth has changed into a magic vapor of illusion, then, when the last line of the tale is done, we wake with a start from our dream, realizing that all is false. Well, here is a strange case. In The Secret Glory, there is the incident of the wretched, exiled, homesick boy, comforted marvelously in the midst of reeking, hideous Lupton, with a Theoria, the actual sight and sense of the beloved mountain in his own land. Well, this is pure invention, without the shadow of foundation in fact or in legend. And yet I am quite convinced that such a thing has happened, somewhere, somewhen, to some one.